Here's what you need to know before seeing The Conjuring: Last Rites. This is the fourth Conjuring movie, but technically the ninth movie in the larger Conjuring cinematic universe. The Conjureverse, if you will. That's right, in case you didn't know, there's been a horror version of the MCU going for over 10 years now. And this new movie is like their version of Endgame, with a send-off for some of the major characters. The Conjureverse is inspired by real-life paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have claimed to investigate over 10,000 cases, some of which are pretty famous, such as the Amityville and Enfield hauntings. As a result of their investigations, the Warrens owned a massive collection of supposedly haunted objects, which they used to showcase as an occult museum. This room of haunted objects is like the Conjureverse's Infinity Stones. Any one of these things has the potential to show up in one of the Conjuring movies and cause some spooky chaos. But it all started with The Conjuring back in 2013. This movie focuses on the 1971 haunting of the Perron family. But before we even get to that, the very first scene introduces us to a character that isn't really important to this movie, but would go on to be one of the biggest villains of the Conjureverse, a doll known as Annabelle. A couple of roommates find that their apartment gets much creepier when one of them is given this doll as a gift. When it trashes their apartment, they try to throw it away, only for it to mysteriously find its way back. The roommates now fear the doll is possessed. But thank heavens, the Warrens are on the case. They explain that the doll isn't actually possessed because inhuman spirits, aka demons, don't possess objects, they possess people. This demon used the doll as a conduit so that it could try to get one of the roommates. The Warrens then take the Annabelle doll for safekeeping, so it ends up in that creepy collection of theirs. But back to the main case. The Perron family move into a new farmhouse and scary things start happening. The mom, Carolyn, wakes up with bruises, the clocks all stop at exactly 3:07 a.m., but worst of all, it's stinky.
Stop farting. Shut up, I didn't do anything.
All of the Conjureverse movies have a similar tone and style. There's a kind of format to the scares, and it was all established here in the first movie. Movies like this sometimes fall into the trap of being a series of jump scares. The problem with this is that they can feel cheap or predictable. But when James Wan directed The Conjuring, he wasn't afraid to let the tension build. It seems obvious now, but at the time, the style of these kinds of movies was much quicker to try and keep the audience's attention. This movie let certain moments drag out for an excruciatingly long time. But if you're going to give all that build up to a jump scare, it better be a good one. And The Conjuring definitely had some clever moments.
Hey, wanna play hide and clap?
The Perron family calls the Warrens for help. They bring in a team of paranormal investigators and eventually determine that a witch used to own the house. When she died, she cursed anybody that would try and take her land. The witch's spirit manages to possess Carolyn, the mom, and plans to sacrifice the children. But Ed and Lorraine work together to perform an exorcism and save the Perron family. Now, regardless of what you think of the real-life Warrens, within the Conjureverse, Ed and Lorraine are basically our superheroes. Lorraine has clairvoyant powers that give her visions and a sixth sense when it comes to paranormal entities, and Ed functions like a priest even though he is, in fact, not a priest. He often ends up holding a cross and shouting prayers at evil spirits.
Defende nos imperlio.
Ed and Lorraine are the beating heart of the Conjuring franchise. They don't appear in all the spin-offs, but it all ties back to them. They clearly love each other and truly want to help the people they meet. I think this is the sleight of hand trick that the Conjuring movies pull. They bring people in because of the scares, but they make a genuine effort in giving you someone to cheer for, so you actually care whether the demons win or not. The Conjuring earned $320 million against a budget of $20 million, becoming one of the most profitable horror movies of all time. So what does the studio do with all that money? Spin-offs, people, spin-offs. Set just a year before The Conjuring, our next movie follows John and Mia, a young couple about to have their first child. Mia already has a porcelain doll collection, and I bet you'll never guess who shows up. Annabelle, you little rascal. Except the doll isn't known as Annabelle yet. See, John and Mia live next door to the Higgins, who are sad because their teenage daughter, Annabelle, ran off to join a hippie cult. Only problem was the cult was more interested in evil than it was in peace and love because Annabelle returns to attack her parents. Annabelle ends up in John and Mia's home where she is by the police while holding Mia's new doll. John is finishing a medical residency, but in his free time, likes to find ways to leave his wife and child at home alone with the evil doll. Mia starts to see scary manifestations of Annabelle. John and Mia eventually learn that the cult Annabelle was a part of were trying to summon a demon. Mia believes that demon is now trying to get the soul of her child. She attempts to sacrifice her own soul to save her child, but at the last moment, John and Mia's friend, Evelyn, sacrifices her soul so that Mia can stay with her daughter. But by the end, the doll mysteriously ends up in a pawn shop where it's purchased by a mother for her daughter, which directly leads us to where it is at the beginning of The Conjuring. And this doll in the background is an Easter egg for the real-life Annabelle doll, which was a Raggedy Ann. Ed and Lorraine's next case came in The Conjuring 2. Peggy Hodgson is a single mother living with her 4 children. As if that wasn't hard enough, Janet becomes possessed by the spirit of an elderly man who previously lived and died in the house. Ed and Lorraine are called to investigate. While they're trying to figure out how to get Bill's spirit to move on, Lorraine is actually being haunted by her own demon. It typically comes in the form of a freaky-looking nun. At one point, she has a vision where she asks what the nun wants, and it shows her a prediction of Ed's death. The vision is so intense, Lorraine even tears up her Bible. The Warrens begin to realize that Bill, as crotchety of an old man as he is, has no real reason to keep haunting the Hodgson family. And that's when Ed realizes that some of the things Bill has said through Janet haven't made sense until he puts it all together.
Oh, please, it won't let me go.
It's then that Ed and Lorraine realize the true villain isn't Bill, but the demon that's been haunting Lorraine, the Nun. Even the Crooked Man, a twisted version of a toy the kids have, was just a manifestation of this demon. So Ed and Lorraine return to the house to try and cast the demon out. And I believe the Crooked Man has returned in the form of Labubu's. Now here's the thing about demons. If you know their name, you have control over them. So how do the Warrens figure out the name in time to rescue Janet? Turns out, they already know it. When Lorraine had that vision of the demon and she carved up the Bible, she actually carved the name into the Bible, Valak. But she also could have just noticed her home decor and saved herself a Bible. So right as Ed and Janet are about to meet their end, Lorraine rushes in and stops Valak by speaking its name and condemning it to hell. The next Conjureverse movie would go back in time to show how a certain doll was actually created. That's right, it's Annabelle, you little scamp. So just to be clear, this movie occurs before the first Annabelle movie. Sam Mullins is a doll maker. He and his wife Esther lose their daughter in a tragic accident. And guess what her name is? Brittany. No, it's definitely Annabelle. Years later, a bunch of orphans come to live with the Mullins since they have a big house. The orphan girls are explicitly told not to go into Annabelle's old room, but Janice does it anyway because the movie needs to happen. She opens a closet lined with pages from the Bible and discovers a doll. This, of course, causes a whole bunch of scary things to happen in the house. We eventually find out that years ago, the Mullins were tricked. They believed that they were receiving visits from their daughter's spirit, so they gave it permission to live inside the doll. But it was actually a demon preying on their grief. The demon then attacked Mrs. Mullins, so they locked it away in the closet. But now that it's been released, it possesses poor Janice. Under the demon's control, Janice attacks all the other orphans and their guardian, Sister Charlotte. They manage to lock Janice and the doll back in the closet, but Janice escapes. The police take the doll as evidence, but nobody knows where Janice went, until we see her in an orphanage going by the name Annabelle. The movie ends just as the Higgins from the first Annabelle movie show up to adopt her. The Higgins raise Janice, who, just to recap, is still possessed by a demon and going by the name Annabelle, as their own, and she is now the same Annabelle that returns years later and attacks Mia. Whoa! We now get our earliest movie in the Conjureverse, meant to show the origin of Valak from The Conjuring 2. Set in 1952, the story follows Sister Irene. And yes, she looks a lot like Lorraine because the actresses are sisters in real life. A lot of fans hypothesize that they were actually the same person within the story, but they're not, so drop it. Sister Irene is called to investigate a dark presence at a monastery in Romania. The history of this particular presence goes all the way back to the Dark Ages. An ancient rift to hell exists beneath the monastery, which had been sealed by some knights. But the rift was reopened during World War II, allowing Valak to enter the monastery. With the help of Father Burke and a handyman named Maurice, Irene manages to seal the rift, but Valak secretly possesses Maurice. 20 years later, Carolyn Perrin from the first Conjuring movie watches the Warrens give a presentation about how they tried to help with an exorcism of a man named Maurice. During that exorcism, Maurice grabs Lorraine, showing how she first came into contact with Valak. The next Conjureverse movie brings things back to the Warrens' creepy collection, and guess who is at the center of the chaos? It's Annabelle, you little scallywag. So this Annabelle story takes place between The Conjuring 1 and 2, but after the other Annabelle movies. Ed and Lorraine go away to work on a case, leaving their daughter, Judy, in the care of babysitter Mary Ellen, who is just an absolute gem. Her friend Daniela, however, is just the worst. Daniela is obsessed with the Warrens' reputation and finds a way to sneak into their room of evil objects despite multiple warnings not to. We'll cut her a little slack because she's really just trying to communicate with her dad that recently passed away. She messes with a whole bunch of stuff in the room, but the worst is, of course, the Annabelle doll, which is so powerful it acts as a beacon for other spirits, so once she lets it out, it activates many of the other cursed objects. This results in them having to fend off an angry bride, a guy with a coin collection, a werewolf, and even a haunted board game. They are eventually able to lock Annabelle back in her case, all before Ed and Lorraine return home. Lorraine lets Daniela know that her dad is okay and loves her. Aw, thanks, Lorraine. Now, this is technically where the Curse of La Llorona would be, but according to the studio, this is not an official Conjuring movie. Hey, I don't make the rules. Sorry, we're not talking about it. Ed and Lorraine's next case starts with them trying to help with the exorcism of a young boy named David. Just before Ed suffers a heart attack, he sees the demon leave David and possess Arn. Ed wakes up a month later in the hospital, but Arn, still possessed by the demon, has already committed a horrible act. He becomes the subject of the first ever murder trial where possession is used as a defense. The Warrens learn from a former priest studying the case that a witch's totem had been in David's house, one that's associated with a specific cult, the same one that Annabelle joined back in the first Annabelle movie. Ed and Lorraine learn that they need to destroy the witch's altar to stop the curse from being passed on. Once they find it, it's revealed that the witch is actually the daughter of the priest. She uses her powers to try and force Ed to attack Lorraine, but Lorraine is able to stop it with the power of love. They destroy the altar and save the day. Arne's sentence is reduced to 5 years for manslaughter. And finally, we catch up with Valak, Irene, and Maurice. So as a reminder, this is our full timeline now. The Nun stories are the earliest, then a couple of Annabelles, the first Conjuring, another Annabelle, and 2 more Conjurings. As we know, Valak has managed to carry on through Maurice, who is working at a school in France. Valak is as evil as ever and is continuing to cause death and chaos, so Irene is sent to investigate since she's had experience with this demon before. This eventually leads her to the school where she reunites with Maurice only to realize that he has been the vessel for Valak. Irene also learns that Valak is trying to exterminate the bloodline of St. Lucy, which is revealed to include both Irene and Lorraine Warren. This is intended to explain where Irene, Lorraine, and Judy Warren get their clairvoyant powers, as descendants of St. Lucy. Irene is seemingly able to banish Valak once more, but as we already know, it actually still resides within Maurice. A final scene shows the Warrens receiving a call to go and help with his exorcism. So, the Conjureverse is defined first and foremost by moments of long tension followed by inventive jump scares. But as it developed, we began to see a series of interconnected plots which have both overarching villains and overarching heroes. Last Rites is supposed to show the Warrens taking on their final case. Will we see the return of Valak, or Annabelle, or maybe one of our heroes like Irene? Let me know what you think. But I can guarantee that we will see the return of the Conjureverse's biggest villain of all, doors.